The movie begins with a man waking up to find himself tied up inside a room lined with metal. On the walls, there are devices measuring temperature, the purpose of which will become clear later. He opens his eyes with difficulty, and when he realizes his situation, he immediately tries to free himself. He then attempts to open the door and escape, but all his efforts fail and lead nowhere. He looks around in panic and notices a mirror. Using a chair, he tries to break it, but it doesn't shatter. Fear starts to creep in, his heartbeat becomes extremely fast, and he begins screaming at the top of his lungs, hoping someone might hear him and help. Soon, however, he realizes that no matter how loud he screams, no one will hear him. Suddenly, his phone rings. The caller is his friend Bruce. He feels a spark of hope that someone might help him, but the moment he answers, that hope is crushed. He hears Bruce screaming and begging for help, telling him that he is also trapped in a room where the temperature keeps rising. Bruce describes the room, and it turns out to be exactly the same as the one Ryan is in. Bruce then says that the temperature has reached its limit. Ryan hears Bruce's screams for a few moments before he dies, yet the screaming doesn't stop. The call doesn't end there. The sound carries through the speakers in Ryan's room, and the kidnapper begins to speak in a harsh, terrifying voice. He tells Ryan that he will ask him one question, and if he answers correctly, everything will be over. The question is, "Guess who I am?" This only increases Ryan's confusion. He refuses to play this game, but the kidnapper insists that this is the only way out. Ryan starts thinking back to the events of the previous night. He had been out late with major investors because of his job. He works as a broker. He gives a random name, but because he fails the test, the kidnapper raises the room temperature to 100 degrees Celsius. Ryan starts pacing around the room, unable to endure the heat. He begs desperately for it to end, saying he can't take it anymore. He smashes everything around him, but nothing helps. Eventually, Ryan gives up and tells the kidnapper he agrees to any conditions he sets and will comply immediately. The kidnapper lowers the temperature and returns everything to normal. He then asks Ryan, "What do you need from me now?" The kidnapper replies, "I want $1 million. I won't accept any excuses. You have 2 hours to get the money." Ryan begins thinking about what to do, because he truly doesn't have that kind of money. The kidnapper also warns him that every 5 minutes, the temperature will rise by 3 degrees. Ryan tries to appeal to his sympathy, explaining that he doesn't own $1 million, that he's just a broker and a middleman between the wealthy, not one of them. He talks about his family and shows him their photos, but the kidnapper responds that he knows everything about him, far more than Ryan expects. Ryan transfers all the money he has, which is nowhere near $1 million, and swears that's all he owns. The kidnapper doesn't care and demands the rest. Ryan then calls his brother John, a police officer, even though they've been estranged for over a year and a half. He gets straight to the point, tells him he's been kidnapped, and asks him to track his phone and come save him. The kidnapper already knew Ryan would call his brother and lets him say everything. After ending the call, Ryan offers the kidnapper a watch that belonged to his father, worth $100,000. The kidnapper shows no interest and forces Ryan to smash the watch with his foot, making it clear that his goal isn't watches or valuables. Ryan tries another approach and calls his wife, but he doesn't tell her about the kidnapping. He asks her to transfer all the money she has to a bank account number he gives her, the kidnapper's account, without asking any questions. She becomes worried and suspects he may have lost all his money gambling, but he doesn't respond. He then calls his mother, trying to gather money from every possible source. She argues with him because he hasn't called in a long time and hasn't been checking on his sick father. He loses his temper and tells her that he sends them money every month. Their voices rise, and she hangs up on him. He calls her again and starts apologizing for his behavior. As time passes, the temperature continues to rise, and Ryan begins to struggle to breathe. He receives a call from his brother, reassuring him that they don't need the money and that they've reached the location and are standing outside. The police break in, but it turns out to be an empty warehouse. They realize the kidnapper has used a signal blocking method, making it impossible to track the real location. But that's not the worst news. Inside the warehouse, his brother finds a note that says, "They're with me." The kidnapper threatens Ryan that he will take someone very close to him. Ryan immediately calls his wife and finds out she's hiding. She tells him that people broke into the apartment and are trying to hang them. Hot water starts pouring from everywhere in the room. Ryan tries to protect himself in any way he can and begs the kidnapper to have mercy. The kidnapper tells him he'll let him live if he brings the $1 million. Ryan faces the harsh reality that he's only managed to gather $100,000 so far, meaning he's still $900,000 short. Ryan pushes himself to his limits and starts relying on his skills. He calls all his clients and manages to convince one of them that he's working on a haircare product project and needs funding. The client trusts him completely, falls for the lie, and sends a large sum of money. Still, it's not enough, and he needs more. Despite the rising temperature, Ryan doesn't give up. He keeps fighting and calling more clients, showing just how strong his persuasion skills are. However, many of them refuse to invest in fake projects because the profits aren't guaranteed. Ryan starts losing his composure and asks the kidnapper to lower the temperature a bit because he can no longer focus or think clearly. Without mercy, the kidnapper raises the temperature even higher, until Ryan finally passes out completely. Ryan wakes up to a phone call from John, who reassures him that they're very close to reaching his real location and that he's already on the way. At that point, Ryan begins to experience hallucinations and delirium, speaking incoherently because of the extreme heat. He also starts remembering how he was kidnapped and what happened to him, recalling that it all began when a man wearing a black mask attacked him while he was in his car. However, he still can't remember anything that happened after that. He asks himself why the kidnapper chose him specifically. He regains a bit of awareness and feels as if his body is boiling from the intense heat. He becomes convinced that time is running out and that it's now impossible to gather $1 million within the remaining time. But then something unexpected happens. One of the clients who had doubted him from the beginning and didn't believe in the project he pitched suddenly calls him. Apparently, the man has changed his mind and is now ready to transfer the money to Ryan's account. All of a sudden, Ryan's account balance exceeds $1 million. He immediately transfers the entire amount to the kidnapper and asks him to keep his promise, open the door, and let him out. The kidnapper responds by saying that Ryan didn't play the game according to the rules. He explains that he wanted $1 million from Ryan's own money, not money collected from other people and sent to him. It becomes clear that the kidnapper knows a great deal about Ryan, as he tells him that he's aware of a hidden bank account Ryan owns containing more than $4 million, and that he specifically wanted the million from that account. Because of this, the kidnapper now demands an additional $4 million on top of the first million. He goes even further and says that he knows the secret PIN to that hidden bank account, but insists that Ryan must personally authorize the transfer. The temperature begins to rise rapidly until it reaches 180 degrees Celsius. Ryan immediately calls the bank and orders the money to be transferred at once. Those are the last words he speaks before passing out. The money is transferred, and the temperature starts to drop gradually until it stabilizes. The kidnapper leaves a small box next to Ryan, but Ryan is unable to move. Shortly after, the kidnapper calls again and tells him that he's still not ready to leave yet. He gives him a bottle of water to drink and suggests that they need to discuss something extremely important. A sheet of paper is slid under the door with the names of all the people Ryan loves, including Leslie, his second wife, a fact no one knew about at all. Immediately afterward, Ryan receives a call from his first wife, crying and telling him that she's been kidnapped and locked inside a room where the temperature keeps rising. Ryan tries to calm her down. A moment later, the kidnapper speaks again and says, "I'll let both of you go, but only if you tell me your real name." Ryan answers, "My name is Ryan." And the temperature rises again because he's lying. At that point, Ryan confesses everything. He admits that he uses more than 10 different names and that he convinces investors he works with that he's just a broker, while in reality he's been stealing from them without their knowledge. The shocks keep coming. The kidnapper interrupts him and orders him to open the box beside him. When Ryan opens it, he finds a finger with a ring on it. He realizes it's the finger of his second wife, Leslie, and that it has been cut off. Before he can even process this, an even bigger shock hits him. Leslie herself calls him, begging him to save her immediately because she's been kidnapped and trapped in a room where the heat keeps increasing. The kidnapper then demands that Ryan confess to both of his wives that he's married to them at the same time. Ryan starts confessing everything. He admits that he married Leslie for her money, that he never loved her, and that the only person he truly loves is himself. He apologizes to the investors he stole from and admits that he deeply regrets everything he's done. Ryan then receives a call from his brother John, who tells him they'll be in front of him in just 15 minutes. But Ryan no longer cares whether John arrives or not. After everything that's happened and everything he's confessed, he feels that his life is already ruined, that no one will ever deal with him again, and that he's been a terrible son, brother, and husband. The kidnapper makes one final demand: Ryan must harm himself using the gun inside the box, and in return, both of his wives will be released. Without hesitation, in a moment of despair and regret, Ryan grabs the gun and shoots himself, only to discover that the gun isn't loaded. Suddenly, the door opens and he's allowed to leave. When he steps outside, he finds that his brother John has arrived at the exact same moment. John reassures him, saying they've surrounded the place but the kidnapper managed to escape. Ryan is confused and tells him he arrived too late. That's when the shocking truth hits him: John was behind everything. Ryan looks at him with betrayal, distrust, and disbelief. John explains that he was just as shocked in the past when he asked Ryan for money to treat his son, who had cancer, and Ryan refused to help, claiming he had no money. Later, John discovered that Ryan did, in fact, have money, so he started investigating him until he uncovered everything. John also tells him that 6 months earlier, he visited Leslie's house by chance and was stunned when he saw photos of her wedding to Ryan. John adds that a doctor friend told him there was nothing physically wrong with him, and that everything was a psychological game. The unbreakable glass was part of the plan, and both John and Leslie had been standing behind it, watching Ryan suffer. They had all agreed on everything beforehand. However, John admits that he eventually hesitated because he realized Leslie truly loved Ryan, and he decided to forgive him for everything for her sake. But Leslie couldn't take it anymore, lost control, and John ended up shooting her and killing her. When Leslie tried to transfer all the money to John's account, she discovered that the account balance was zero and that no money had been transferred at all. This leads to the final twist: Ryan knew everything from the very beginning. Ryan admits it and explains that he became suspicious early on, especially when John called and said his wife had also been kidnapped, even though Ryan had never told her that he himself had been kidnapped. Ryan adds that he fully confirmed it when he offered John the watch and asked him to break it. He knew John would never do it because John never liked that watch and had always been jealous of it, since their father gave it to Ryan and not to him. He also realized the truth when he figured out that the finger he found was fake. Once he connected all the dots, everything became clear, which is why he transferred the money in a way that guaranteed it would be immediately recovered and wouldn't remain in the account. John tells Ryan that it's all over now and that they can leave and start over as if nothing ever happened. But Ryan has a different idea. He locks John and his wife inside the room, walks away, and leaves them behind. And now the question is for you, my friend: do you think Ryan deserved this ending? Should he have died instead? Or does he truly deserve to live because of his extraordinary intelligence? Let us know your opinion in the comments, and we'll see you in another recap. Thanks for watching.